So welcome back to yet another video for my CAS project. Now we'll be doing a t-test. So there are two types of t-tests. So there's a two-tailed t-test and there's the one-tailed t-test. So this is pretty much the most important thing you guys have to know for basically when you find answers. So I'll highlight this like this. And yeah, I would say maybe find this, write it down, take a screenshot. So if the p-value is smaller than the significance level, there's sufficient evidence to reject HO in favor of H1. Otherwise, there is insufficient evidence to reject HO. So HO is the null hypothesis and H1 is the alternative hypothesis. So yeah, as you guys can see here, so in a two-tailed t-test, what we're trying to find is that is if the alternative hypothesis is if the mean values of x1 and x2 aren't equal. And for a one-tailed t-test, we're trying to find if the alternative hypothesis, so basically if any of x1 or x2 is greater than each other, right? So that's important that we read the question correctly, so we know kind of if we're doing a two-tailed t-test or a one-tailed t-test, because that's when the calculator kind of the settings you use on your calculator change, and when your answer will be right or wrong. So here, important, so a two-tailed t-test, yeah, as I said, the null hypothesis, x1, the mean of x1 equals the mean of xo, and the alternative hypothesis, the mean of x1 does not equal the mean of xo, and in exchange, a one-tailed t-test, so the null hypothesis, again, like before, the mean x1 is equal to the mean of x2, while the alternative hypothesis, either of the means is greater than the other, right? So now we'll go on to an exercise. This exercise came up in my mock exam, and I thought it was a great example of what a one-tailed t-test is. So how do we know that this is a one-tailed t-test? This is actually what I did not realize in my mock exam. And what you see is that the woman claims that the mean weight of the eggs is less than the mean weight, okay? So what we're seeing is that she claims that let's say x1 is smaller than x2, right? So she is claiming that either one or the other is smaller than the other, than the other one. So we'll name this x1 and this x1 and this x2, right? And what we're trying to prove is if this one, black geese are smaller than the mean weight of eggs from white geese, right? So what do we do this? So first we'll start off with the null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is HO. That's question A. And you kind of always have to remember this. You just kind of know this. So here we go back and we see the null hypothesis, x1 is equal to x2. So this is pretty simple. So we go here and rewrite the mean weight of black and white geese eggs is equal, right? And then it's not asked in the question, but we'll still do it just so we see what the alternative hypothesis is. So here we see the mean weight of eggs from the black geese is less. So the alternative hypothesis is the mean weight of black geese eggs is smaller than the mean weight of white geese eggs. All right, so as we can see, we come back here, one-tailed t-test here. In this case, this is the one we're looking for, right? Okay, So we go, now that we have this, we go to question B. Calculate the p-value for this test. So this is when the calculator comes in. So here we use GDC. In an exam, don't write GDC, just calculate it. And we go to the table. And what you want to do is you want to go to stat and edit. I already have the values. So you implement these values into the table. So I'll write it here so you guys can screenshot it. So you go stat, edit, and in L1 you add x1 values, and in L2 you write x2 values, right? Once you have this, you want to go to stat again, calculate tests, and you want to go to so in this case, 2 sample t-test. Stat 2 sample t-test. Okay, and you want to do L1, you want to mark pooled, and in this case what we're trying to find is if U1 is smaller than U2. So in this case we would have to click here, right? So indicate this. We set this correctly and we click calculate. So we see the values. P value equals 0.1769. So yeah, the p value we mark as equal to 0.1769, and yeah, I guess the 3 significant figures equals 0.177. all right, now question C asks for so you guys can see, state whether the results of the test support Ariane's claim, justify your reasoning. This is where the significance level comes in, right? This is where this is important. So we go here and we write 10% significance. So we remind ourselves of this significance level, right? And the p-value was 0.177. Okay, now that we have this, it's essential that we go back here and we remind ourselves of this thing here. This is the most important thing you guys have to know, right? You guys have to remember this, memorize it. And you want to go here and yeah, so what do we see? So this 10% is equal to 0.10, which is evidently smaller than 0.177. So what do? We go here and we interpret the answer and we write as the p-value is larger than the significance level of 10%. This means that there is sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis in favor of H1, basically, right? All right, so this tells us now we interpret the answer. This is essential. So interpret. So what does this mean? This means that therefore, this is always an essential step. Rihanna's claim is not supported by the data. This is the pretty much key sentence, as this is where you're answering the question, right? Okay, so now we pass on to a new exercise. So now we'll do another two-tailed t-test example. I actually already completed question 1 to go a bit faster. And so yeah, an oil company claims that to have developed a fuel that will increase the distance traveled. So again, we know it says increase, so this must mean that x1 is becomes smaller than x2, right? So again, a two-tailed t-test. So question 1 asks, write down the null and alternative hypothesis. So we write this. So HO would be equal to x1. The mean of x1 is equal to the mean of x2, so there would be no difference. And what the oil company is saying is that the mean of x1 is actually smaller than the mean of x2 because their new fuel actually runs for longer, runs for a greater distance. So the distance traveled with the original fuel is smaller than the distance traveled with the new fuel. Okay, so like before, we want to go to stat, edit, and include the numbers. So L1 will put original fuel and L2 will put new fuel. So you can see the values here, right? Now you go to stat, calc, and once more you go to two sample t-test, and we're trying to prove that U1 becomes smaller than U2. So again, the middle one, right? If we're actually trying to prove that the original fuel runs for longer than the new fuel, which would make no sense, but let's imagine that scenario, then we would click U2, okay, as the new value. X2 would be, yeah, so we would choose this one, but in this case it's U2. So we click calculate and we get the answers. So as asked, the t value, which commonly is not asked in exams, t value is negative 2.825, while the p value, as you guys can see indicated here, 0.0056. Okay, so we found this and we tick another. And the third question says, write down the conclusion to this test. So 3. So we remind ourselves that the 5% significance level is present. So what do? 5% means that 0.05, and the p-value is 0.0056. So unlike before, the p-value is actually smaller than the significance level. So like this, right? So what does this mean? This means that therefore, as the p-value is smaller than the significance, whatever level, there is, you always want to write sufficient evidence or insufficient, never assert, evidence to reject the HO, so null hypothesis, in favor of the oil company's claim of H1, right? Yeah, so in favor of H1. Therefore, this means that the new fuel works best. Thank you for watching.